we'll try and reconstruct the journey of really what it takes to start a climate action sustainability company. And so I'll just start by asking each of you to tell us a little bit about your journey in terms of how you got to starting your respective companies. And if there were any moments in your own journey so far that led you to this point, were there any aha moments that said, okay, I want to move towards doing sustainability related or a climate action company, to try and get the sense of what it is that takes to start up a climate action sustainability company. And if, Anne, you want to start.
So I think half the people who come into this space, this is an idea that might be eating at them, that comes through from either the environment point of view or the, the dignified labor of being in any sort of like climate related thing. So we run a startup called Wasted 360 Solutions. And I remember in the beginning, I had such little confidence that, I could even do something in this space, because I could not, I didn't have any money to start off, even a little capital to put forward. I was in a full-time job. I had financial constraints that would not allow me to leave that. So it was only after 2 years of being on ground, and it's a point you get to where it just gnaws at you, and then it doesn't matter, you have to do what you have to do. So the first 2 years gave me that confidence, like this is how you're supposed to approach this, and if you have this knowledge, you can build something. So the kind of data that was not available at that point, I had to seek out that data. So back in 2017, wanted to understand, like, how can we be in India? We have waste pickers, we have scrap shops. This is not at all known in the Western world, and yet we have overflowing dump yards. So understanding the problem becomes so important to go live. So yeah, that was my journey into like coming into this space.
Thank you for sharing that.
I think for me, it started before even the climate conversations became that hot. I think for a lot of people starting in India, we were doing work related to climate, for them, a lot of interest is actually from the real life problem solving that happens. So for me, for example, the thing that fascinated me the most was around the water and sanitation access, lack of access that I was able to see. Right? We work in the field of underground robotics and management for water pipelines, sewerage, manhole cleaning, and so on. And what we realized was that more than 50% of the water, the treated water, fresh water that gets transported from the treatment plant to the houses, was getting lost in leakages and contamination and so on. We had people who were manually cleaning manholes and septic tanks, which we now know as manual scavenging. And it just felt that this is something that should not happen, because from an efficiency, dignity, safety, from all aspects, this seems wrong. Yep. So that was the starting journey of why we got into this. Later realized that climate has become a buzzword, and hence if you position yourself as that, probably the chances of you getting funded, it becomes much better. So saying that you are a water tech startup may not give you that access, but saying that you are a climate tech company probably gives you better access and ears for investors. So that is how our journey in that happened. But I think the core of this was always around the problem that India has, and how, as tech, as entrepreneurs, we are able to solve for that.
Thank you for the candid sort of take on that. Gayatri.
Can you all hear me? Okay, great. So my journey was quite interesting. I started off at a commercial real estate development firm, and then it turns out that entity was focused on creating projects that the builders sort of looked at as a long-term investment. So they naturally built in infrastructure that was then later certified LEED Platinum. So and I was part of the team that was sort of executing the project. So I would be part of discussions, meetings that help me understand the decisions that need to be made within organizations to arrive at an end product like that. Then alongside that, I accidentally got aligned with this individual who was working on saving 3 lakes in Bangalore because of rapid encroachment and urbanization. There's a lot of lakes in Bangalore that was sort of built on top of. So then during the course of that case, which spanned over a decade, I learned a lot of things about creating public infrastructure, meaning even when you go to revive lakes, you have to build in infrastructure like aeration, sewage treatment plants, etc. Right? So it sort of gave me a holistic view on how to go about things. So that was the initial years of my career, and then I launched a foundation because I thought, hey, one person cannot solve for, if one person was able to solve for saving 3 lakes, what could we do when we came together as stakeholders and address this differently? So I launched my foundation called Create, and then I do work around need for better urban planning and development, because it's a series of conscious stakeholder effort that needs to come together to solve for it. And then while I was on ground doing this work, I also got trained to be a climate reality leader by Al Gore's Climate Reality Project. And that sort of gave me the climate narrative and perspective on, yes, we can actually still make a difference. And while doing that, I noticed that there were a lot of problems, but there were not enough solutions. So I wanted to be part of creating point solutions that solve for the built environment, which is when I launched another organization called NOW. NOW stands for No Other World, and it's a sustainability action venture studio where we work with entrepreneurs who are solving the hard climate and sustainability problems, specifically in the built environment, energy efficiency, decarbonization space, looking at cities as a problem and problem that needs to be solved. That is how I came to climate as a, and then started working on climate.
Thank you, Gayatri. Clemens, all the way from Germany, tell us about your story.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, first, let me answer your question. My realization actually was that in this startup environment, also as you described it, there is a lot of help. There are a lot of people who want to do things, and it doesn't matter if they are in your field or in other fields. I so far received incredible support from everyone, and I also try, when people approach me, it doesn't matter from which field again, when I think, okay, there is a possibility that I know someone that could be a useful connection, I try to establish this connection. And maybe if someone here also pursues the idea of founding a startup, this would be my #1 advice. At first, really speak to people, and people often will help you, and a lot of good things will come out of these personal connections. And maybe a little story here. In Germany, there is an interesting program. So my company Flexova, and this is a spin-off from the Technical University in Dresden. And there is a specific government program which is called Exist Forschungstransfer, which translates to research transfer. And the idea is to transfer academic research into the economy, into products. And the process is it takes a lot of time to get this. Maybe this is for you. We have a German policymaker here as well. The program itself is very powerful. It's not the fastest, but it's powerful. So starting this, I thought, oh, this is such a great idea, what we're doing. We cannot tell anyone and so on, and develop this. And in the end, we failed in the first round. And the second round, so my co-founders and I, we sat together and we asked ourselves, okay, are we done? Is this the end? Or are we trying again? And we decided to try again, even though the outcome was not clear. But what was clear is that the result, whether we would get this grant or not, this decision to get would take roughly 1 year. So 1 year of great uncertainty. And yeah, this time we completely did it the opposite way. We spoke to so many people, to different stakeholders, even to one of to a venture capitalist. I spoke, and I had him sign a piece of paper, like some letter of intent, if you ever want some investors and stuff like this helps. Well, I asked him whether he could sign this, that we strategically fit into his fund. And he actually signed this. We then got this grant. 2 years later, we incorporated this company, and last year we even got that investor on board, which is very cool, and all just because we started actually speaking about our idea and speaking together with people.
And I want to sort of go a step further and ask, can you sort of tell us the journey of how you got your first customer, and how did you go about hiring your first few employees? Because a lot of people in the audience are thinking about now starting up in a bigger way than we've ever seen in the past. So if you could just touch upon these first customer, first few hires bit, and some of the challenges, experiences of going about doing that.
Okay, so for me, there were a few things that were important to me back in 2017. So I think I had a lot of clarity in how we are going to execute. So around me, I could see people who were part of waste management or community activation for controlling the waste, urban waste management. They would do all this, but I would go to these events and I would not find a single person who was 20 years older than me or 20 years younger than me. So I would see a lot of youngsters and I would see a lot of 50 plus people, and even the players then would be like, either a trust or a foundation, and all of the communication was like, dump yards are catching fire, the world is burning, Mother Earth is burning, and I come from a communications background, and I felt like, a lot of people were scared, and they didn't have the opportunity to take any action. There was nothing positive that an individual who's opening Instagram, I could see that awareness was all over the place. So actually the company Wasted was supposed to be waste education, and it's supposed to relate to youngsters. And then I realized that awareness and education is all around us. But how does someone take that first step? How does a community take the step as an individual, as an organization, an institution? What are they going to be able to realistically do? So when we let's look at the first user, right? I just wanted to understand what waste is generated. So we went to an organic store. I knew a sustainable audience comes to shop at an organic store. They had a Tuesday, Saturday farmers market. So we just promoted to the same audience saying that, hey, why don't you bring in all the dry waste from your house and drop it off here. If you have paper or plastic, give it to the local scrap shop, give it to your driver, give it to your maid, but bring us everything else. So this was in ECR, high income group areas, a lot of expats. So we were seeing things like Tetra Pak, cigarette butts, torn and stained clothes, thermocol, x-rays, tablet strips, broken furniture. The list is endless, right? You go back home, you see everything around you is going to be waste when you're done with it. So this made it easy for me to bridge that gap and arrive at that solution. So I had a lot of, people try to discourage me in saying that, hey, people are coming and dropping off waste and getting money for it. You are asking people to come and drop off waste for nothing. You're making them make an effort, segregate the waste, clean Tetra Pak, keep cigarette butts separate. You're expecting so much from your user and you're not willing to give them a single rupee back. So that first user is now 15,000 users. And we have people who come from across the city. We have people who send us waste from Delhi, Mumbai, because we are the only ones who still collect inner waste. So to capture that first user, I think the community was so important, right? Wow. So they were like, okay, I don't want to segregate the waste, but there's someone who's doing it. Let's just go see what she's up to. So we grew with the community. We took their feedback, we based our solutions on things that are working. Sometimes when you see the problem, I mean, that's why the company is called Wasted 360 Solutions. But when you see the problem daily, you really think that maybe some people don't want to fix it because the solutions are right there, right? Like, how can we understand and implement small pilots to be able to convert this? And our first client, like paying client, was in 2020. They were Tetra Pak India, and it's a funny story how we converted that. I just started collecting Tetra Pak from another organic store, and I used to go to the Tetra Pak India website and message them every single day. And they were so annoyed after 3 months that they sent the mail to the Asia Pacific head, and there was like, there's this girl in Chennai claiming to collect Tetra Pak and sends us a mail every single day. So the head of Asia Pacific, like, they sent a mail saying that, you know, what is she up to? Like, just find out what she is up to. So there was a program called Go Green with Tetra Pak that they were running across the country, and we got to rename it Take Me Back Chennai, Matika to Home, you know, like, we'll show you change. And yeah, I got to hire all my staff from marginalized communities, acid attack survivors, waste picker spouses. So that's how, you know, the first user and the first client happened for us.
Wow,
So, yeah.
that's just fantastic. I mean, the grit and perseverance that you're talking about is, I think, exactly what startups will have to share. Maybe Devanshu, if you can.
That's pretty impressive, actually. We we had our sort of set of struggles, but not as much as what she has talked about, for sure. We work in the primarily, like, one of our biggest customers is B2G, which is like cities, municipal corporations, and so on. And what we had an early realization of that they're not the early adopters of any technology that you would see. And that's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of tech startups have not come out with municipal governments as their customers, right? So when we were doing a lot of our customer search during that time, we got to realize that there are some of the cities which are actually getting privatized, where a private company as a big contractor is essentially taking the contract of privatizing and managing some of the water supply, sewer networks, and so on. So we felt that maybe if we're not able to go to them, we can go to the private players and see if they find value in some of the products that we have. And initially, when we went to them with our pipeline inspection product, we were essentially pitching for leakages and so on. And we pitched to a couple of them. There was nobody interested because they felt that, hey, anyway, water is free. What are we going to sort of do about that? But one place, what happened was in Coimbatore, essentially, which essentially was our first client, Suez Coimbatore. They had a lot of problem with water contamination, because one thing that sort of happens is when the water is leaking, of course, the leaked water doesn't have much value in case people are not paying for water. Right. But if there is an inward contamination of sewer into the water flow, and if people are getting contaminated water, that becomes an issue for people. Yeah. So that was a big issue in Coimbatore that they wanted to solve for. And then they asked that, can you sort of essentially come in and solve for that? So we did a demo for them, and we ended up identifying a couple of crack points where we were able to sort of tell them that this is exactly the place underground where the contamination is there, which otherwise they would have to dig at multiple places, and it would have taken them like weeks to find it out. But interesting part is that even after that, we could not get the order, right? Because the person who was heading the operations there at that point in time was not a very fierce supporter of technology, and he just felt that, oh, I can get it done dug by the laborers who are there. Why do I need the technology and pay to you guys? So still the contract got stuck, even after we did a successful demonstration of our product and technology at the client side. Pursued them for every month. We would send them an email and so on, and things would not move. 6-7 months later, one of the project heads of that project who was there, he called me up and said that, Devanshu, there is a friend of mine whose, I think, son or daughter has gotten an internship at a startup, which is at IITM. And I want to check whether that startup is doing well or not, so that I can decide whether to send her there. And I said, sure, I know the founder. I can just ring him up. If you want some confidence, I can have him talk to your friend as well. So I just did that, and probably that worked out. Next day, he gave me a call saying that, hey, तुम्हारा project का क्या हुआ? एक project तुम लोगों ने technology बनाया था 6 महीने पहले. What happened to that? And he said, sir, the project is still stuck. This has not moved forward. I said, oh, is it? Let me sort of arrange for a meeting and then see what can be done. And a month or 50 days later, we had a work order in hand. So the moral of the story is that a lot of times when we are the reason I'm setting this story is because a lot of the climate-related work that we're doing is going to be with institutions. And a lot of times, whether we like it or not, institutions have multiple decision makers. And just because you have one person who likes it does not mean that you will essentially end up getting the project. Just because you have merit in the product or just because you're able to give them returns on investment doesn't mean that you will actually be able to get the contract. In the early stages I'm talking about, because you don't have a brand and people are okay with the status quo today. There is not very urgent need for them to change. The policies are still evolving and so on. And hence, along with having a good product, along with having a good technology, the relationship that you're able to develop with decision makers and influencers at multiple stages becomes a critical factor in how well you're able to get the contract. And the good part is that Coimbatore contract we have continued since the last 3.5 years, and they continue to remain as one of the most invested customers till date. So that's the thing. And just a story of the employee, first employee that you wanted to ask. I think the thing that we did very shortly, if I can answer, is to look for people who really care about the problem. Honestly, when we started first, we didn't have much money to pay for. We were essentially paying like 10, 15K per month during that time, even though the market salaries could be about 80,000 or a lakh per month. But of all the times I've realized that if you're hiring for your team where there is a vision in the organization, there is a mission there, people come together. And in that case, you do not choose people, people choose you. So if you're essentially continuously looking for people who care about the problem as much as you do, you'll end up finding people who come to you just to be a part of the journey. And then, of course, you build together something, you build something of value, and then you raise money or you get clients, and then you can pay them as much as is needed. But the idea to hire the first few people that you want to bring together is to look for them as partners in your journey rather than as employees. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Gayatri.
My journey is also quite, I mean, it's different but kind of similar in the struggle aspect of it, because I want to go back to during lockdown, during COVID, when we were all shut down. That's when I had to pivot most of my foundation work online, because I had just started the foundation, and then lockdown happened. So then I could not be doing the work that I wanted the way that I had planned. So I had to pivot this, right? And at that point, there was not enough solutions that I could work with. So, and I discovered this app, like Figma app. I'm sure most of you all have used it. It's just like, it's a very interesting app just to doodle around, etc. So I started doodling on it, and then I said, hey, I want to create a studio where I work specifically with entrepreneurs, and I want to give them specific to the solution that they're solving for. I want to curate services that will help them and also invest in them. So that's essentially what Now Venture Studio does. We co-build and invest in businesses that are solving for climate and sustainability. So I drew this Figma chart, and I went to a bunch of my friends who were investors, and I showed them this chart, and many of them said, Gayatri, don't pursue it. It seems like it's too hard. It's not worth pursuing it, and there is no one that has already done this, or there's not enough success stories in India, right? So then I said, I just kept feeling that I need to pursue this, and then suddenly and then eventually I went and met more people, and then 2 or 3 of them said, hey, this is interesting. We can work on it together. So I feel like they found me because they sort of resonated with the vision. But was that it? No, it got harder from there, because the developing the thesis, I actually did it from IIT Madras, right, where we said, what are some strengths that I bring to the table, and the people who join me, what do they bring to the table? It was a mapping activity, and then we also had to figure out what are the gaps that are there within our founding team, and how do we sort of address this. And then once we were kind of sort of ready, we launched Now Venture Studio literally last year. So it took me like 3 or 4 years of just doing work in the background while I was running my foundation to sort of iterate a lot of the thinking that I had. And then once we launched and then opened applications, I was pretty sure no one will apply, right? I was like, who even knows about Now, and who's going to apply to this? And to my surprise, I got 1,600 applications, and we were so overwhelmed with so much work, because we are a very small, lean team, and we're like, okay, now what do we do about this? And surely there was a bunch of mistakes, but we learned from them. And just last week, we signed with our first entity that we will invest and co-found, and specifically focused on climate risks and climate building resilience for India, right? And so now we have a pipeline, and we now have sort of moved to the second phase where we know we'll encounter newer set of challenges, but we learned from the previous ones and we overcame them. So it's not really as bad. So I think you should just persist on it.
Thank you. Wise words.
They continue?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Would love to hear your take.
All right. Yes, this sounds very interesting. Also, what you said about hiring and analyzing the gaps basically of the founding team. I think this is very important. On the one hand, on the technical side, but what we also found very helpful was this disk model where you can group people into different. You can basically analyze their characters a little bit, including yourself. This is very important because we found that this can help you understand how to work actually better together with certain people in your team. And maybe also if a learning was, for example, if you want to hire someone in the production, and then there's the person who will work with the new hire, he needs to be involved in the hiring process. Otherwise, there's a chance that this just fails on a personal level. And maybe to come back to the customer thing, we are hardware. We're building hardware, so we basically print sensors onto flexible foils, and with this you can collect a lot of data over large surfaces. And there are different areas of application, and our strategy has been always to provide value in the form of innovation to customers. And similar to what you have done with going to the like some organizations and asking them to pour out their rubbish in front of you, we also built some demonstrator which looked like in retrospective really bad, really, but it served the purpose of demonstrating at least the principle so that these people could understand what we were trying to convey. And then you kind of need people who have a little bit of creativity and can envision their products together with our product can be a really good match for the end customers. And then this looked very promising, everything, and then we were thinking, okay, how much do we actually charge? And then again, at an event, I met another founder who was a little bit further down the road, and I approached him and I asked him, how much would you charge him? And I had like 25,000 euros I had in mind, which is like, I think 2.5, more or less, a million of rupees. This is what I had in mind. And then he said, well, maybe you should go to between 40 to 100,000 euros. And this seemed so much to me, and I was actually shy to even ask this. And then I asked him, okay, but how should I do this? And then he told me, just cut the elephant into 3 pieces. And this is what we actually did. We went to that customer and we told him, look, similar projects, similar startups for similar projects charge between 40,000 euros and 100,000 euros. What we can offer you is that we reduce, let's say, your risk in that sense, and we cut the project into 3 parts. The first one will be a feasibility study, and afterwards you will see if this is actually viable for your business. The next phase will be field test, and the third will be the rollout. And surprisingly, I gave him the offer to choose between 40,000 and 100,000 euros. Guess what he chose? 100,000. I don't know why, but it was great. Yes, so that was for our first customer.
That's a very interesting take. And
yes.
I'd love to go on in this thread, but we're running short of time. But I can sort of try and close before I open it up to the audience with one final question to the group here. It's based on this Jacobi's inverted theory. He talks about how we should think about things from backwards, and if you had to visualize yourself in your organizations, say 10, 15 years from now, where do you see it? And if you could briefly walk us back to where we are today, where you guys are at today, where you're expecting the company yourself 10, 15 years down the line, and how do you walk backwards to the point that you're at this moment?
So what was important for me in the past few years is understanding where I want Wasted to go and why I built it. So when we were incubated in NSR Cell in IM Bangalore, I think I got clarity after 4 months that I don't want to be the next unicorn. We were profitable, we were able to, do this. That's not where I want to be. I've lost both my parents, I'm not married. I built a family here. Right, I work with Waste because I work with the community that has given me so much that I don't have to work for anyone else again. That is something that makes me really happy. And I can work with people. I never have to work for someone again. So I think that's where I am. We recently got our valuation, and even though I only submitted the data, I was like, oh, it'll come to like 2 to 3 crores, and it was 12 crores. And I was shocked that we were able to even do that because, the first time for the Tetra Pak project, when we got signed on board, I was a sole proprietary firm. And the finance guy calls me and he's like, ma'am, there's no drop down for sole proprietor. We can't give you that much money and you don't even have a company, right? So we'll have to move you into consultant. And even that changed. They finally added it in their vendor onboarding form. But for me, I'm pretty sure for the next 10, 15 years that the clarity that brought me here, that I would start as a company, that I would, run, have youngsters be part of the ecosystem. And only in 2023 did we start the trust. So I think I would show the part where it's profitable, which gives credibility to the waste management sector itself. And I would focus more on the trust activities, capacity building, creating dignified livelihoods for people in the waste ecosystem is where I think we would transition. And this year we are rolling out a product. And again, I don't even think I want investment for it because we've been self-sustained for so long. I think it gives me the kind of confidence I need to be able to run this. And as a tech company, I have to make some decisions, right? I might have to sell out because I'll be eaten up by my competition. I can't go to accelerators that look at money as the only thing or like returns. I have to see impact ventures. So we now got incubated at Upaya Social Ventures where they are looking at giving 1,500, 2,000 jobs if they're going to invest in you. And I think that would be the route that we would take because waste pickers, from 2017, I've been calling myself a glorified Kupakari. So that's my Instagram handle as well. So I just feel so in touch with the waste picker community. We laugh, we're waiting to order biryani. We are like, everyone comes from, these kind of communities that are marginalized, like fishing communities, acid attack survivors, domestic abuse victims, and we've created a happy place for all of us, and that's the part I want to make grow. So the environmental impact is now, an additional plus. So I think I have that clarity now that I've entered my mid-30s, and I think the next 15 years, this is what I want to do in a very sustained way so that I can do it the way I want, because I would have never been able to do it this way if I had taken anyone's money before. So I think I'll continue on that path. Yeah.
That's very beautiful. Thank you.
I think for me, the way to think like a decade or 15 years is to really think about the problem and how much we have been able to add value to that in terms of solution. So if I am looking at lack of technology in urban water and sanitation as a key problem, because of which, let's say, we have water leakages, manual scavenging, and all of that happening, I would like to imagine a place that if we have been around, so we have already been there for like 5 years now, and if I'm talking about 15 years, it's almost 2 decades of our existence. And that should tangibly shift the way that things have been working so far. So the way that I would imagine is that the cities that we are working in, they should completely have technology access in the way that they think about their operations and maintenance without any people. Of course, people will be involved there, but without having any people prone to safety disasters, or without having our natural resources like treated drinking water being lost because of contamination and so on. So that is the way that we think about it. And in terms of tangible, what we think is that if we have, let's say, 600 urban local bodies in terms of places where we can essentially impact, we should be able to do about 20% of them in the next 10, 15 years, so that we can prove to people and to the world that this is something that is sustainable from both technology investment returns and so on, right? Yep. I'm yet to see today a tech company in municipal segment that has been profitable, sustainable, and grown to a scale that actually shifts the goalpost. Our sort of mission would be to create one and show to the world that it is possible. And of course, that would mean sizable revenue, everything which people can think of in terms of unicorns and so on. But I think that if we are able to get to that scale, that is where I would want to be. Today, I think we are at 1/5 of that. If I can say, like, we are doing about 10, 15 cities partially where we have contributed to their water infrastructure or sanitation infrastructure and so on. In one of the cities where we are working, we were able to reduce their water leakages by about 40 million liters a day. Like, the overall supply was about 1,000 million liters. So 40 million liters a day of leakages and contamination we were able to solve because of the last 15 months of work that we were able to do. In some of the cities, we have been able to give access to about 5 to 7% of households which were there, which were earlier not getting access to water. And these are urban slums who were spending about 15 to 20% of their disposable income on private tanker water, which otherwise they would have gotten access to free, because of course the municipal supply water is free or like charged at a very minimal cost. So that's the way that we are able to do today. I would like to see that the impact essentially scales to all the citizens across the city and at 20% of the overall urban local bodies that are there.
Very well put. Thank you.
Nice. I like your grand plans. It's very interesting. So, I mean, I look at this slightly differently. I recently have been working on this also, but it's this concept where you think of an idea. Anyone who's exploring a new idea that you want to pursue, or a new, if you want to create a new company, right? You think of the idea and then don't do anything, right? Just in your mind, you just think, what is this going to be again in the next, what is the next step? What is the next step? So think as far as you can. And then at some point, you look back and say, is it as exciting as it was when I thought of the idea first? So that's really how I'm thinking of this, right? So, so from my point of view, in 10 or 15 years, I'm thinking I want to have invested and sort of created 10 to 15 category leading companies and launch them, because I like to work with really the ideas, right? Ideas, you take it out of the lab, or just think of an idea or a research paper and convert it into a commercializable product. And my aim is to just support those entrepreneurs, and to the point where I simply connect them to their next institutional investor or first paying customer. So that's really the range that I look at. And so I'd like to believe in 15 years, I've done 12 to 15 good companies, launched them, enabled them, and grown with them, because the concept of a venture studio is I grow if, you know, my startup grows. So it's very dependent on that. And I want to put in the effort as co-founder with you to sort of build the companies.
Very nicely put. Thank you.
I really like this. This is very beautiful. And I have some very similar idea about this, actually. So my idea from the beginning was green capitalism. I want that it pays to make good things, to make things better, and that people also get rewarded for this. I really like this idea. And what we're doing with the technologies, the technology is, make things in that sense, or let's say entry market is like the heating sector, and we are making the heating for the housing market more efficient. So this serves everyone. And my long-term idea is also to sustain with the business that we're building right now, kind of a fund actually. So what my co-founders and I are doing right now is we're building a company as you have been doing as well. This involves a lot of lessons about how to build a company and how to create networks and stuff like this, how to hire people on so many different levels you learn. And at a later stage, I want to take Flexora public, and with this money also sustain my venture fund in a way, and to do this professionally, where I can support founders from also a founder's point of view with my capital, but also with my knowledge and network. And I don't want to do this only in Germany, but I also want to do this in other parts. And I see this community aspect very important in that sense, because I know I cannot do this on the entire world. This is not possible. But it's really nice to hear that other people also share the same idea and vision. And I think if we connect, then this can be really cool.
No, I think this is very interesting because everyone's sort of sharing a similar thread, but going on a different approach or way to get to that. And on that note, we'll stop with this session. Please join me in giving a big round of applause to Anne, Devanshu, and Gayatri, along with Clemens. Thank you again for joining us.